Hello, I am the Story Girl, and welcome to the story of the Snow Queen. Part 5, The Eternity Puzzle.
If this is the first of the Snow Queens that you have watched, stop. And go back and watch. Stop. And go back and watch the first 4. I'll go ahead and put them in the cards and I'll link them below if I can figure out how, so that you will be able to know the whole story of the Snow Queen.
And where was Kay all this time? Working on his puzzle, of course. Working on his very important puzzle. And as he worked, his fingers and his hands and his arms and his nose and his toes and his feet and his cheeks began to turn blue. He began to move like a clockwork boy, cold and frozen. His heart no more than a chunk of ice inside of him. All he cared about was the puzzle. The pieces of ice clanged against each other as he moved them, piece by piece, trying to find the correct order. The Snow Queen popped her head through one of the cracks. "I'm going for a moment, my dear. I am going to look into the volcanoes and turn them a bit white. One has to, you know, every once in a while. It's very good for the orchards of lemons and grapes." Of course, she was talking about the volcanoes in the warm part of the land where snow had never been felt before. But the Snow Queen's chill had been sweeping over the land, and now she had a pathway to go and freeze the volcanoes and the orchards and all the good things in that part of the world. "I will be just back." Madam Snow Queen," called Kay in his frosty voice. Said she. "When will I be done with the puzzle?" "Oh, you will be done when you're done. Remember the word? Eternity," said he. "Yes. And when you are finished with that puzzle, I will give you the whole world and a new pair of skates." Oh. To Kay and his frozen heart, it seemed that there was nothing better in the world than a new pair of skates. And as Gerda laid her little bleeding bare feet inside of the castle, there was Kay, his body now so blue it was black from the cold, sliding the pieces of the puzzle. Gerda heard the sound and followed it all the way until she stepped out on what appeared to be a very tall balcony in a very large room. In fact, she thought the sound was coming right underneath her. Turns out that she had laid her poor cold bare feet on the top of Kay's eternity puzzle. She looked down through one of the cracks and shouted out for joy, "Kay! Oh, Kay! Hello, Kay!" Even though he was blue, almost entirely blackened from the cold, she would know her Kay anywhere. He looked up and saw the face of a little girl poking through one of the cracks. He stood as straight as he could. "Do I know you? Kay? Don't distract me, little girl." I'm working on a very important puzzle. And he slumped his whole body over, and as slowly as ever moved another panel and another. Kay, what has happened to you? Kay, it's me, Gerda. I don't know any Gerda. Gerda stood there for the first time in her life, feeling the frost and the chill. She had come all this way to find Kay, to bring him home again. But he was lost inside of the puzzle. A single tear trembled at the edge of her eyes. She heard the chillest voice she'd ever heard in her life, laughing through the room. So you've come. I was so hoping you would. In fact, I was depending on it. Gerda looked up and saw, floating down through the ceiling of the room, light as frost, the tall, stately woman with the ice eyes. Finally. Are you going to cry? That's all you ever do. I've been watching you, Gerda, almost as closely as I've been watching your little friend. She pointed a long finger inside of the boxed-off room in which Kay was still sliding the panels back and forth and back and forth. Yes, you two children are very, very dear to my, well, I don't have a heart. Who are you? Said Gerda. Me? Why, I'm the Snow Queen. And at last, I have you. You're so warm, Gerda, so putridly overflowing with warmth, the warmth of the sun. I couldn't touch you, but there isn't very much different between ice and bright light. I burn my own lights, you know. You probably saw them in the sky. I could touch Kay, and so I breathe my frosty breath on his heart, and he has quite forgotten you. Quite forgotten. He's working on his puzzle right now, and I've promised him that as soon as he works it out, I will give him the whole world. He's working on a puzzle? Said Gerda. Oh yes, a very special puzzle. You see, I have a very amusing goblin friend who loves to make things out of glass. And I had him specially prepare this puzzle so that as soon as you spell the word eternity, the door will open and the person inside will be free. Well, Kay's been working hard, said Gerda. Surely he will be able to figure it out soon. Well, that is the funniest part of all. I had had my goblin friend make it to exact specifications. It's missing a single piece. What? Yes. He will never finish it. He will be in that puzzle forever, which is why it's called the Eternity Puzzle. And I will have one for you, my dear, one for you. And then finally the 2 children who dropped from the sun will be mine, and the world will turn cold and frosty. Every part of the land will be my domain, and your silly, warm, bright father will have failed, and I will be the queen of the world. Gerda felt the tear that was on the edge of her eye slip silently down and chime on the top of the Eternity Puzzle. She did not know it, but that small tear found its way through a crack, a chink in the ice, and dropped down right on top of poor little frozen Kay's head. And that tiny drop found its way through his mind, through his eyes, down into his heart pocket, and was so warm that it melted away the Snow Queen's frost. Kay gasped. Both Gerda and the Snow Queen looked. Kay shook his head, looked up, and saw Gerda standing on the roof of the puzzle. "Gerda!" he said, and then he looked out through the clear glass panels and saw the tall, stately Snow Queen staring at him. He walked up to one of the gaps in the puzzle and poked his head out and said, "Please, Mistress Snow Queen, I'd like to go home now." "But you can't," said the Snow Queen, a flicker of fear in her eyes. "We had an agreement. We had a bargain. You can't be free from me until you've finished the puzzle." The Snow Queen looked up at Gerda. "You little brat, and your warm tears. I must get you away or you will spoil my lovely ice. But I can't touch you. You would melt me. But I can blow you with my wind." And the Snow Queen brought up a blast of wind that tugged at Gerda's very soul and pulled and pushed and tangled her down from the top of the Eternity Puzzle. Rolling and pitching, she began to hum her song that she could hear singing inside of her, the song of the sun, humming as loud as she could, but she couldn't win against the strong winds blowing. Kay watched his friend be blown against the wall of the Snow Queen's throne room. He looked around and saw that there was only one piece missing. He had almost completed the word eternity. No, there was one small piece missing. Yeah, he had seen a piece of glass like that before. Where? Slowly, his blue, frost-blackened fingers began to unbutton the pocket of his heart. And he pulled out his own glass-covered heart. It was no better than a chunk of ice, but it would fit perfectly in the last space of the puzzle. He pushed, and it clicked. The pain was so great he could barely see. Blood ran in front of his eyes, but he heard the tsk, the thunk of the door of the puzzle opening. And he stumbled to the door and, putting his lips together, began to whistle. He began to whistle the high lilting part of the Song of the Sun, joining with Gerda's song, the low humming throbbing of warmth, and his whole body shone with the power of the sunlight. And the Snow Queen was blinded as the light reflected off of all the glass and all the ice that had surrounded her dark realm for so long. She screamed and shielded her eyes, and the song rose up, and she stumbled backward, clutching at her ears. The song pushed her and pushed her back until she had stumbled back into the door of the eternity puzzle. Kay's little heart fell to the floor with a skitter. There was a thunk and a as the mechanics and the gears of the puzzle began to move. And the Snow Queen lay trapped in her own eternity puzzle. Kay had no strength. He collapsed. Gerda ran to him and saw that he had unbuttoned his heart pocket and that it lay empty, frozen, cold. His little fingers were frigid. His eyes glazed over. She ran over and picked up the little heart and saw that the crystal of the glass was all broken and shattered. She very carefully lifted his heart up and gave it a kiss. Very carefully laid it inside of his heart pocket and buttoned it back up. She lifted his fingers and rubbed them. She tapped on his cheeks, but he didn't stir. Okay. She took his hand and closed her eyes and began to hum. The low throbbing sound of the warmth of the sun. She felt Kay's fingers tingle, and she hummed all the louder and stronger until she heard a crack of ice, and the Snow Queen's palace began to melt all around them from the heat and power of her song. The life began to seep into Kay's whole body. His face melted away, with the blue and the black of the frozenness all melting away and gone, leaving him as pale and rosy as before. His lips drew together, and he began to whistle the high lilting harmony that made the power of the sun. Okay, Gerda! He jumped up, shining as brightly as he ever did. Gerda, where are we? And he saw the eternity puzzle and remembered. Oh, Gerda! He embraced his friend, his sister. Gerda, you saved me. The two children took hands and walked away from the Snow Queen's now melting palace, and every step they took, grass and flowers sprung up in their footprints. Kay and Gerda walked all the way back to the bush with its frozen red berries. Saw that it didn't have frozen red berries, but those berries had dropped off,
and the whole bush had burst into blossom. They smiled at each other and heard the footbeats of the reindeer coming to fetch Gerda back to the Finn woman. Gerda and Kay leapt aboard this wonderful beast, and they went back and spent many, many days with the Finn woman, who healed Kay's many wounds. And they talked and laughed and filled that little house with the warmth and brightness of the sun. She set them on their way with a message for the Lapp woman, who grunted and snatched it from them and gave them each a sandwich, and they rode off back through the world. As they were riding along, they happened to see someone in the distance, someone riding a very beautiful white horse. This someone appeared to be a girl with pistols at her sides. Gerda shouted out, for it was the little robber girl. "Hello there, hello!" said the little robber girl, riding her horse forward. "So you're the little globe-trotter who this little girl's been looking for? Well, hope you're worth it." "What's going on? Why are you so far from the forest?" said Gerda. "Oh, robbers have all been killed by the soldiers from the Golden Castle. That raven friend of yours went and told the whole thing to those people in the Golden Castle, and so I don't have a home anymore." "How did you survive?" said Gerda. "Oh, they let me go because I told them all about you and about how I'd let you go free. So I'm traveling the world now, seeking my fortune." The two, the reindeer and the horse, rode together with their companions, all laughing and chatting and being together until they reached a beautiful, colorful little cottage that had some wooden soldiers standing outside. Gerda jumped down and knocked on the door of the charm woman, introduced Kay, introduced the little robber girl, and the little robber girl and the charm woman took a fancy to each other and decided that they would live together with the little robber girl as a charm woman's daughter. They waved goodbye to the boy and girl who had let the reindeer go free and were going to go by foot, walking back to their town where this story had started. They walked hand in hand as springtime erupted around them, birds in the trees and flowers and grass and leaves all springing together, joining in the beautiful song of the sun that they sang as they walked along. They knocked on the door of their granny, and they knocked on the door of Kay's papa. They were received with warmth and open arms. They went up to their little garden place and saw the roses were in bloom, more bright and beautiful than ever before. They looked at each other and saw they were no longer children. They were ready to go together throughout the world to melt and heal the hearts of those who've been touched by the goblin glass.
Later that very evening, the goblin, who is well known to the Snow Queen, strutted into the Snow Queen's throne room. "I've heard you had a bit of trouble, ducky," he said, calling into the Eternity Puzzle. "You be quiet," said the Snow Queen from inside, "and tell me how to get out of this puzzle. Get me out of here." "I can't," said the goblin. "You told me to make it to very exact specifications. Only a person who's willing to give up their heart can solve the Eternity Puzzle. And as you well know, I, just like you, have no heart." And the goblin strut out of the room laughing while the Snow Queen cursed and screamed after him. The Snow Queen still burns her green, eerie lights from inside of her prison. And if you ever happen to be in the northern lands, you might see them. And you might hear a sound that sounds suspiciously like the chink and grinding of ice. That is the Snow Queen trying to find the solution to to the eternity puzzle. The end.
It has been a long journey for me and the Snow Queen. I hope you have enjoyed this story. Go ahead and leave a comment below what you thought of my friend Hans Christian Andersen's tale of the Snow Queen. I confess, I altered it a little. I always do. Every single time a story is told, it's told a little bit differently than it was before. It has more of me in it and has become part of my story. I am the main character of my story, just like you. Thank you for joining my story today. Bye.
Is there anything else we can say?